It's week 11. Thank God for another week of fantasy football. But this week, there are tons of good options on the waiver wire, and we need to go over who we should be adding and who we should be spending that fab on this. Most of us are still fighting for a playoff spot, or maybe our playoff spot is currently right there, and we need to make sure we don't fumble the bag and fall out of the playoff hunt. So let's go over a wide range of players, but we're also going to go over some other positions, but mostly the wide range of players out there. So let's roll the intro. Have made a video about this player before. Just going to go over it really briefly. Cedric Tillman is still out there. You need to pick up Cedric Tillman. Another player, probably already added in your leagues, but I gotta go over it anyway because you just never know. You never know what kind of fantasy football league you're in or somebody else may be in that could actually benefit from this info. You need to go pick up Jatavion Jennings. Yes, I'm talking to you. You gotta go pick him up. But the wide receivers do not stop here for this week. No. We have plenty of other options if you are in need of a wide receiver. And that first player would be Marquez Valdes-Scantling of the New Orleans Saints. And I know what you're thinking. Turtle, this guy had 4 targets in 2 games. What the hell are you telling me saying add Marquez Valdes-Scantling off the waivers? Like, if I got to use my fab, why does it have to be MVS? And my answer to that would be, with Derek Carr back now as the quarterback, they are going to throw the ball a good amount. And I want to ask, who are they going to throw the ball to? You have Alvin Kamara, you have Taysom Hill, who's probably not going to get that many targets, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And this is a rare case of adding somebody by subtraction of their own depth chart. There have been plenty of injuries to guys like Chris Olave. There have been plenty of wide receivers in this room that just aren't ready to be professional wide receivers. And we know MVS, with a good quarterback, can be plugged in and played as a decent fantasy receiver. Now, New Orleans does have a bye week in Week 12, but in Week 11, they play the Cleveland Browns, 30th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. And coming off of the bye week, we have what kind of is a little tricky of a situation right now. They play the Rams. The Rams are 26th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receivers, but the Rams defense isn't bad. So I do have a little bit of doubts if he's playing the Rams, you got to start him. But this game against the Cleveland Browns, definitely plug in MVS and play him. And if the Rams end up being a good matchup for MVS, you're going to have the Giants, the Commanders, and the Packers following. So again, solid matchups. At least 2 out of the 3, I wouldn't feel so great about playing Green Bay. But playing the Giants and the Commanders, I definitely would feel good about starting MVS in those situations. And if for some reason those names are not really intriguing you, you don't feel like you need to spend the fab on a Marquez Valdes-Scantling because in your leagues, Jatavion Jennings and Cedric Tillman have been long gone, and I get that. These matchups coming up are going to be tough, but volume trumps all, and that would be Elijah Moore of the Cleveland Browns. And last week, the Browns were on a bye. But in Elijah Moore's last 3 games, he's averaging 9 targets per game. So as long as he's catching them and he's not, letting them hit him right in the hands, those 9 targets a game are going to have some value if you need a wide receiver. I don't know how anybody else feels about Elijah Moore. I've been the anti-Elijah Moore truther. I've been saying that this guy is just not it. But you know what? He's clearly good enough to get on average 9 targets a game. He's seen as much as 12 targets, and the lowest he's seen in that 3-game stretch was 6 targets. So he's got to be part of this offense. There's no doubt about that. What kills me is the next 4 matchups that Elijah Moore is going to have. He's going to play Pittsburgh. They're 8th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receivers. He's going to play Denver, which is the best team in terms of fewest fantasy points allowed to the wide receivers. Then the week after, he's going to go play Pittsburgh again. And then the week after that, he's going to go play Kansas City. So those are really 4 tough matchups. I couldn't elevate a guy like Elijah Moore to say you got to pick him up over an MVS. But it's a damn good consolation prize if you can't get any other wide receiver. He's getting the volume. He's getting the targets. And that should be good enough for at least a rostering ad. And now for a player that they just kind of need to get it going. They need to just get lucky enough to find it in the end zone. And that's Demario Douglas. He's got targets. He's playing the snaps. He's just been unfortunate in terms of getting that touchdown in fantasy. And don't get me wrong, it's definitely concerning that Demario Douglas only played 42% of the offensive snaps last week. But despite playing such a small role in the offense last week against the Bears, he still nagged 5 targets, which, if he bumps that up to a 60-70% snap share, you're looking at 6, 7, maybe even 8 targets in a game. And coming up, he is playing the Rams this week in Week 11. So that is a good matchup. If you needed a wide receiver, you see Douglas is out there, you can definitely go pick up Douglas and just stash him on your bench. But that's enough wide receiver talk. Let's get to the other positions of fantasy value and fantasy needs for us in Week 11. So let's briefly talk the quarterback position. I have gone over and sprinkled over the idea of adding Bo Nix to your roster. If you have not done that and he's still available, definitely go do that. But if not, one of the first fantasy football videos I made on this channel was not to draft Justin Herbert. And now, I'm telling you, you got to pick up Justin Herbert because I was wrong. Despite essentially cutting his pass attempts completely in half, which I predicted, he's still uberly efficient with the football and is not turning it over whatsoever. Even in a run-first offense, which we expected, Justin Herbert is still taking good care of the football and still getting 2 touchdowns most games, which is good enough for a nice spot start play if you're someone in need of a quarterback. If you can't get Bo Nix, if you were someone who drafted Anthony Richardson, if you played Sam Darnold these last few weeks and you're still rummaging around, maybe you even lost Dak Prescott and know that he's not the guy anymore, you need to go pick up Justin Herbert, and you need to play him. I have no problem admitting that I was wrong about the Justin Herbert situation. I do feel a little surprised that he is balling out, considering his low passing attempts, but he is a really good quarterback. We know he's a really good quarterback. We've been known that. And to see it now finally come to fruition, even in a run-first offense, is special. And we got to add Justin Herbert for that. Maybe those 2 guys are unavailable in your leagues. Then you could go ahead and feel really good about grabbing Russell Wilson. He's probably added already in your leagues, but it's still another option in case that you can't get to a Bo Nix or a Justin Herbert this week. And before I get to the running backs that we need to be adding to our roster, allow for a quick word from our sponsors. I still don't have a sponsor, but White Monster, hit my line. What are you doing? But in all seriousness, let's just sprinkle over really quickly. Tight ends that you could be adding. Jonnu Smith was an absolute bust, even though I recommended him last week. So if you still need a tight end, Mike Gesicki is a good option. If you're feeling a little frisky, you want to buy into an offense that nobody wants to buy into, I personally like the idea of rostering Jatavion Sanders. I wouldn't play him right away, but you can definitely stash him. This is somebody that is an athletic tight end. He's very similar to like a Gerald Everett or a Jared Cook type of build, and he's going to get looks in this offense, being that there's really not many guys outside of Coker and Xavier Legette that could possibly even get the football. But now, the running back position. And we're going to start here with Gus Edwards of the LA Chargers. For the season, I said Kamani Vidal over the rest of these cats. Right before the season started, I said it was not Kamani Vidal versus the rest of these cats. I never thought it would be J.K. Dobbins, but now that Gus Edwards is back healthy and he's taking half of the snaps, Gus Edwards is the guy that you can be adding in fantasy. I wouldn't say that he needs to be started right away, but this is somebody that if he's going to get the goal line work and he's going to split the backfield with Dobbins, this is going to make J.K. Dobbins much, much less valuable in fantasy. And more importantly, it means that you can drop Kamani Vidal despite we really fell in love with the idea of his first touch in the NFL being a wheel route touchdown and maybe he would bring some kind of juice to this offense. That has not happened. But Gus Edwards in his first game back has brought the juice back for the Chargers. If you can't land Gus Edwards, and that's perfectly okay, I am massively big on the idea of adding Audric Estime to your rosters. Audric Estime was not very efficient in his first real game of getting serious usage. He played almost 45% of the offensive snaps, which makes Javonte Williams completely irrelevant. It makes Jaleel McLaughlin a thing of the past. And now Audric Estime is the guy, even though his efficiency is just as equal to Javonte Williams has been this year. They have yet to show us the potential of Audric Estime as a pass-catching back. He really never came into this year's NFL draft with the idea of being a good reception back. But if he could just add like 2 to 3 targets to his game on top of the carries that he's going to be getting, this could be a legit fantasy football start option late in the season. And you're going to say, wow, I'm really glad that I picked up a rookie running back who's just getting absolutely fed opportunities. We know the Denver Broncos don't like to throw the ball 30, 40 times. We know they like to run the football. So why wouldn't you go out and add the running back that's being fed all of those opportunities, or most of the opportunities? I wouldn't say Audric Estime is somebody you could add and then throw right away into your lineup in Week 11. We do need to see how this unfolds. But if you wait another week, you're going to miss out on the opportunity to add him. So I would add him, stash him, and absolutely just hope for the best if you're in need of a running back. Unless there's some kind of massive injury to one of the top 12 running backs, this is probably going to be the last good running back that you're going to be able to add for a discounted price before the playoffs start. And you don't want to miss out on an opportunity like that to make your team better as you go into the playoffs and start fighting for a championship. We've seen him be a lot more efficient in a smaller sample size, and he did play one of the best teams in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back spot. So we shouldn't be too worried about his 3.8 yards per carry in his first real game as a starter, because the matchups are going to get better. Maybe it's not going to get better this week against the Atlanta Falcons, who are 7th best in fantasy points allowed to the running backs. But in Week 12, they do play the Vegas Raiders, which is a great matchup and great opportunity for Audric Estime to show what he has in terms of being an NFL starter. I'm not going to go on a limb now and say that Javonte Williams is somebody you need to drop, but by next week, don't be surprised if Javonte Williams is someone you need to drop. Another running back we could look to be adding is Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans. At one point, we felt that Tony Pollard was the guy and the only guy. But now with Tony Pollard not going to probably miss significant time, but being banged up enough to make this backfield a committee again, Tyjae Spears has fantasy value just being a pass catcher alone out of the backfield. If he can continue to see between 7 to 12 carries on the ground and get those 2 to 3 targets per game and make something out of those targets, Tyjae Spears could be a decent bench stash and be somebody that maybe in a spot start you can end up playing on your fantasy rosters. And the last running back, this is probably more of a desperation and a long shot that this player becomes fantasy relevant, but Cam Akers of the Minnesota Vikings should be on your radar. Aaron Jones is day-to-day with a hip injury, and if we know Aaron Jones, he's always day-to-day, and he's usually good to miss a couple games here and there. So take advantage of the opportunity to grab a Cam Akers who could be in for a nice size workload if Aaron Jones were to miss 1 to 2 games. Now, Cam Akers would get a bump in play, but obviously Ty Chandler, if healthy, would supersede him. But Cam Akers still should be worth a stash in your leagues. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you stuck around and watched this entire video, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you're new here and you like fantasy football content, feel free to subscribe down below. It goes a long way in terms of getting my videos out to more and more people. And if you liked fantasy football content, and if you liked this video specifically, make sure you leave me a like. Your boy would really appreciate that. I'm going to try something else this week. We're going to go over boom plays. We're going to go over some bust plays, guys that I don't like. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next video.